Hello and welcome to Woodfired Weekly, where this week we are going to talk about wood. And wood is a subject we get asked about a lot. People worry about which wood they should be using and why they struggle to light their fire or whatever it might be. So it is, of course, a very important subject as far as wood-fired cooking is concerned. The first thing I think to bear in mind is that people have been cooking with wood-fired ovens for a very long time. And they haven't been able to go online and order their wood from a distant wood merchant and be faced with a choice of different woods. They had that wood which was local to them, and that's what they used, and hey presto, it worked fine. We now get ourselves all tangled up about whether we've got the right wood or not. Very simply, any hardwood is going to be absolutely fine. Softwoods, they just burn a bit too quickly, they don't have enough density. They give lots of flame, not much heat. Try and avoid softwoods if you can. Pines can also be a little bit tarry because of the resins in them. So hardwood is great. If you've got access to some oak, to some beech, to some ash, to some apple, to some hornbeam, to some sycamore, to some elm, any of those, they're going to be great. We could argue about the differences in how much calorific value they have per cord of wood, but the differences are really quite minimal. When it's alive, wood is just full of water. There are channels running up and down the tree trunks and the branches, carrying water up and down. So when it's cut, it'll be somewhere between 45% moisture and 75% moisture. Almost impossible to burn. 45% moisture you can just about burn. So when people say you can burn ash when it's just been cut, they're talking about that 45% moisture content. That doesn't mean you should burn it, because it'll produce lots of smoke and not much heat. If your life depended on it though, it would be okay. Don't put it in your wood-fired oven. So I've got some wood here which I cut and I sat in my garden. This is holm oak, so Spanish oak. And if I put my probe in here, 28% moisture content. In the center of the wood. I just split this. Now if I do the outside, 40% moisture content, because I haven't kept this in ideal conditions. This has just been sat out in the garden. To dry it properly, it should be undercover so it's not being rained on, but with open sides so the air can blow through and take that moisture away. This oak is very old. You can see that it's gone grey on the outside, so that tells us that it's been cut a few years now. So you'd sort of think, well, that's going to be fantastically dry, isn't it? So I split this and get my probe. 40% moisture content. It is so dense that it just takes a long time to dry this stuff out. This is good old English oak. Once it's dry, it's fantastic stuff, but it takes a long time. Here's a piece of sycamore. This has been dried in a barn properly, and that's 20% moisture content. Lovely. And here's a bit of kiln dried birch. I'll push that right in. 5% moisture content. Brilliant, brilliant. So, which one of these should I be using on my wood-fired oven? Definitely not that in the high 20s and 40 on the outside. That will produce lots of smoke, lots of hissing, not much heat. Definitely not that, because at 40% moisture content, that's going to be actually quite difficult to burn. I'd have to dry that out in the oven before it actually caught fire. 20%, that would be great. That would be no problem at all. That would burn nicely. 5%, this is going to burn easily. It's probably going to burn a bit quickly, and it may not be the most efficient wood to burn, but it will be the most responsive and it'll give you the most controllability. So I tend to burn almost all this stuff because it gives me maximum control, and sometimes something like this, sometimes 20, low 20s%, because it leaves a much better bed of embers. The moisture just helps it to leave a nice bed of embers. And if I want to use my oven like a barbecue and cook bistecca fiorentina over a lovely bed of glowing embers, I want something that's going to last a bit. So that would be ideal. This stuff, this big boy, is compressed wood chip, oak, and this probably came out of the factory at close to 0% moisture. Now it's been sat in my cupboard for a while. The outside there is at 7.5%. Wood is hygroscopic, so it will absorb moisture. So initially it dries out, but then, beyond a certain point, it becomes hygroscopic. So this stuff comes out of the kiln, lovely and dry, but if it's sat in outside in our atmosphere, we just have wood at sort of 16 or 17% after a few months, because it would soak it back up. If you've got a very good wood supplier near you who knows that you're using your wood for wood-fired oven, and they know that you need it at about 15 or 16%, then they may keep that in a lovely spot for a little bit longer and you'll have ideal wood. But the safest thing to do is to buy kiln-dried wood, because you're absolutely guaranteed that it's going to be nice and dry. All of your wood will arrive in big old chunks like this, and these don't give you much control unless you've got a very big oven. You don't want to be burning anything like this. So you need a half decent axe, and then to split everything down into small pieces like this. And this is pretty much what I burn all the time in all of my ovens. Little pieces of wood about no more than 1 inch, 1 inch thickness. And then some woods are a lot easier to split than others. So if you've got some beautiful old lovely dry olive wood, that's fantastic, but it's going to be a devil to split because it's all bent and gnarly, and oak can be like that as well. This is birch, and it splits like a dream. You drop the axe on it and it pops apart. So the next question, of course, is, do these woods contribute to the flavour of our food? If we're just heating up an oven, no, they don't. They don't make any difference at all. If we're cooking pizzas and the fire is burning really quickly at 450 degrees, there's no smoke and there's no opportunity for the wood to flavour our food. If we have a bit of smouldering ember in our oven and that drifts over our food, it'll deposit some nice smokiness to it. So if we've got some apple from an orchard, or some pear, or some oak, or something like that, and we just let a little bit of wood drift over, you'll get some really lovely flavours. But of course then there's a chance that it bursts into flames and things get too hot. So when we want to add smokiness to food, we tend to use some soaked chunks. And folks like these guys, hotsmoked.co.uk, will provide you with any kind of wood, hickory, mesquite, all these fancy woods like that, and you chop it up into chunks and soak it, sit it on some embers, not so likely to combust, and it just gives you a nice little flavour. What you don't want to do is shut the door on some smouldering embers, because then the smoke sits around your food, becomes stagnant, and deposits nasty tasting creosotes and other chemicals onto your food, and they don't taste very nice at all. So you always want smoke to be just drifting over your food and disappearing, so the door is never shut tight. These wood chips are great if you're cooking something for quite a while. So if you're cooking the chicken for an hour and you put some of these on, the chicken will pick up some flavour for sure. If you're cooking something short and sharp and you want to give it a burst of smoke, then a few little chips are going to be better, because they'll just give out a big old plume of smoke. So we smoke scallops wrapped in pancetta with these, or mackerel, or smoked salmon, or something like that, with a few, just with a handful of damp chips. Great stuff. Okay, so I think that's a little bit about wood. I hope that was useful. If you've got any comments or any further questions, please put those down in below. Thank you for joining us at Woodfired Weekly. We'll be back next week with another video. If you like this one and you want to subscribe, that will be fantastic. Then you'll be notified every week. You can do that, and we'll provide a few notes about wood down below as well. Thank you very much.